Welcome to Fire Service Warrior video blog number 3. Last week we talked about duty, and today what we're doing is we're talking about the next step. Part of our ethos, part of our responsibility as Fire Service Warriors is to acknowledge the dangers of our vocation and do everything possible to minimize those dangers, except shirk our duty. Our duty is to stand between our neighbors and unrestrained fire. That's a duty that we have voluntarily accepted. And we talked about that last week. But we also have a responsibility to minimize the dangers of the fire ground. We can't eliminate risk from our job. It's an inherently dangerous profession. Look at the underside of your helmet. Look inside your coat at the labeling on the inside. Look at the handout that comes with any piece of personal protective equipment. What does it say? That this is an inherently dangerous job. But we do have the ability to minimize those risks. But how do we do that? Well, the first thing that we do is we have to understand the environment we operate in. We have to understand fire behavior. Fire is the enemy. Know your enemy. We have to understand building construction, right? The building's not the enemy, but the building is the battleground, and it's the battleground that the enemy controls if we don't understand it. If I don't know how fire is going to spread through the building that I'm crawling in, it's going to kill me. So what we have to do then is begin controlling that environment and having the knowledge to control that environment to achieve a degree of relative safety. We have to know how to get water on a fire. We have to know that crawling down a hallway to get to the seat of the fire is going to require us to push through the most untenable place on the planet right then and there. A place that's so hot that we can't breathe, that we probably can't see. But we have to know deep in our souls that if I push through and make the turn, that I can get water on the seat of the fire and things will get better. If I get pinned down in the hallway and all I'm doing is putting water on the flame front, the building will flash over. I will become a statistic. We have to understand that. We have to understand that ventilation is our way of changing the battleground, right? The fire will spread through the building based upon the laws of chemistry and physics. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But we can change how that fire behaves and improve our survivability by properly ventilating the building, by relieving the pressure in that container, by giving the heat someplace to go other than over the head of the nozzle team crawling down the hall. There's a ton of dangers on the fire ground. We've got the fire itself, right? The risk of thermal insult, of sudden fire behavior changes. We also have the toxic products of combustion, right? A fire call is a hazmat call. That building is filled with immediately dangerous to life and health levels of carbon monoxide and hydrogen cyanide, especially in the places where we're operating, crawling or duck walking. That environment gets a little better the closer to the ground you get. But the higher and higher you get in the building, the more you're exposed to those products. And once the fire's knocked and we start overhauling, that's when it gets really bad, because now they're no longer being consumed by the fire. That's why we wear our SCBA. Cancer is a disgusting, horrible thing. I've seen it firsthand. It's killed friends. My wife is a 3-time cancer survivor. It's a brutal thing. So wear your SCBA. Minimize your risks. And then we've got everything else that we've got to deal with. Heat stress. The effects of heat stress are being studied extensively. The IAFF has done studies. My colleagues at the Illinois Fire Service Institute have released studies. And what we see is that the cumulative effect of heat stress plays a role in cardiac compromise. Heat stress is leading to line of duty deaths because of stress and exertion. So what do? Well, exercise helps. Rehab. I know rehab's not a macho word, but rehab. We need to get out, we need to cool down, we need to drop those body core temperatures. We need to give the heart time to come back to a normal state before we engage in that battleground again. Hydration. If your only means of hydration is a case of Diet Pepsi, 14 cans of Monster, or 3 pots of coffee, you're forcing your body to operate at a disadvantage. Now, I love coffee as much as the next guy. I get my cup of Dunkin' Donuts every morning on my way into work. But the reality is, I drink about a gallon of water a day because I understand what can happen to my body if I'm not properly hydrated. Another one firefighters deal with all the time, sleep deprivation and interrupted sleep. If we lose 24 hours of sleep, if we go 24 hours without restful, restorative sleep, we have the same cognitive deficit as somebody who is legally drunk. We also begin to show the same signs of insulin resistance as a type 2 diabetic. And we increase our risks of heart disease and cancer. What's killing firefighters? All over the world. Heart disease and cancer. Every day we hear about somebody who's died from occupational cancer. We need to get more rest. I don't know how to tell you how to do it, especially not when you're in an on-call position where you're waking up in the middle of the night and going to calls. But you have to find a way. You have to find a way to get the good restorative sleep as often as you possibly can. It can literally save your life. The reality is, the only way for us to minimize the risks that we are exposed to and to create a relatively safe environment is to master our trade. We have to master being firefighters. We have to strive to be fire service warriors. We have to thrive on the fire ground. Nobody more than I would love to see unrestrained fire go away from our society. I would love to never see somebody's house burn down ever again. I would love to never see anyone experience a fire loss. I would love to never see another fire death. It's not going to happen. Not in our lifetimes. Not in the lifetimes of anybody that's watching this the week it gets put out. It's not going to happen. The reality is we need firefighters. We need fire service warriors that are willing to accept their duty to stand between their neighbors and unrestrained fire. And we'll do everything we can to minimize our risks, except shirk that duty. I think I have to acknowledge that, in my opinion, there are folks out there in our ranks that would love to see us never run into another burning building ever again. They think that we can eliminate line of duty deaths and eliminate injuries and treat this as, make this become the safest job on the planet by just not going into burning buildings. That's not what we're there for. We're there to stand between our neighbors and unrestrained fire. We're there to solve people's problems. That's why we volunteered for this. Not for a check, not for a pension, not for a badge or a pager, not for a pat on the back at the grocery store. We stepped up and raised our hand and said, I'm here for you. That's what we're there to do. And as long as we are willing to do that, we're going to do things like search buildings that look like they may be vacant or abandoned, because we know that they're not always vacant or abandoned. We do that in a intelligent, thought-out, calculated manner, but we still search. We're going to talk about that more in the next couple of days because I think that it's a critical point. There are those out there, though, who hate the idea of us running into burning buildings. And it makes me think of George Bernard Shaw's comment, very famous playwright. Hatred is the coward's revenge for being intimidated. Those people who hate us running into burning buildings, who hate this blog, who hate the idea of proactive firefighters conducting offensive operations in the hot zone of the fire building, they're terrified of it. Pure and simple. They're absolutely scared to death of the operating environment that we choose to put ourselves in. I know there are people out here who think this entire fire service warrior idea is the biggest cowboy idea on the planet. Think it's reckless, think it's dangerous. I respectfully disagree. I think that this is about embracing a mindset that is centuries old. It worked for the Spartan culture. It worked for the samurai of ancient Japan. It worked for the medieval knights. And it works for the members of our military and special operations community today. There are those of us who have to stand up and protect our neighbors. That's what fire service warriors do. So, once again, thanks for coming out. I hope that a few minutes worth of talk and thoughts on these ideas is stimulating some conversation, stimulating some debate. Keep the comments coming, keep the visits coming. We've had over 8,000 site visits for the month of January. It's been a phenomenal month. Thank you so much all for coming out. Once again, all of this is provided free of charge because I'm hoping that we continue to find folks that love it and care and want to succeed and want to excel, want to thrive. Once again, if you're going to be at FDIC, come, check me out, look me up. I'll be there for the week. Don't forget to tip your waitresses. Until then, cheers. Have a good weekend.